Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today we have a little bit of a longer video, and it's really specialized, but I think it's a really powerful tool, and that is creating and editing Notehead sets here in Dorico. A Notehead set is the idea that if you wanted to have all your notes to have triangles, or if you wanted to have them all be X's or circles or anything like that, this is where we can access that. There's a couple of powerful tools built in here, which is if you wanted to make a default articulation on every single note head on a specific instrument or something, this is another place where we can add that so that even when we're MIDI entering notes, all of these things would appear as we're doing it. And so I could definitely see how in an advanced composition this would be really handy. So let's dive in with how to create custom note head sets here in Dorico Pro. So I have a document open here, and you can see I've got a few notes in here, but I've also got a drum set part. Now, drum sets have a lot of different articulations and MIDI patterns and all of these other things, and I could definitely see how this could be really useful in terms of a drum set. By using notehead shapes, we could do some extra tone shaping as well as match up with like a complicated MIDI drum set instrument so that we could get the kind of looks and appearance that we want out of our part. Now, there are other ways of doing this, like with articulations, percussion maps, but I can definitely see how changing the notehead set could be really handy. So let's go ahead and get started in this. Now, no matter what document you have pulled up, when we go to edit notehead sets, there's a couple of things to remember. One is a notehead set is not totally independent, meaning just because noteheads are in one set does not mean they don't exist in other sets. So we have to be really careful about editing noteheads because we don't want to edit every single notehead in our document, obviously. The second thing is that we need to add and remove notes from a notehead set. So don't think of it so much as deleting noteheads as it is that we have certain notehead sets that have commonalities and others that have absolutely nothing to do with the others. So here, let's dive into the notehead set editor. So if we go under Library and go down to Notehead Sets, we're met with the Notehead Set Editor. Now, there's a couple of things to note here. The first thing we have is our categories, and this is just for pure organization, but it also helps to kind of make sure that if we're talking about X's or crosses, as they call them, triangles, diamonds, all those note heads are in the same place. I will admit, if you want to put one where you can find it easily, go ahead and just leave it in the common area. On the bottom here, we can add and duplicate notehead sets, and we can also set a default or reset a notehead set. Over here on the right, you'll see we have the properties of each one of our notehead sets and the different things that we can do to these notehead sets. So let's go ahead and start by creating a brand new notehead set so that we sort of have a clean palette to work from. So I'm going to go ahead and go down here under my category, and I'm going to hit this plus sign to add a new notehead set. And you're going to see it gives me the option to name it, which I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to name this David Notehead. All right. Now, the first thing you'll see is it put it inside of a category, but at any time I could decide to put this under the diamonds category, triangle, and you'll see it auto updates on this side. So as we go through this, it actually is pretty darn handy, but I'm going to leave this under common because I want to make it easy to find. Now, when you first create a notehead set, a really dangerous thing happens. It actually adds in a default notehead from whatever category I was in, which in this case is this notehead black. This notehead black is actually found in other sets. So if I was to change, add, subtract, multiply, or divide this one, it would affect it over here in the default noteheads and any other place where it's used. So we definitely don't want to actually change this one. What we want to do is we want to add a new notehead. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to this plus sign and we're going to add a new notehead. We're going to give this one a name, and we want the name to be unique so that it can't be confused with any other notehead. And this one I'm going to call it David Phil. Now, once I have at least two noteheads in here, this is where I want to get rid of that default notehead so I don't change the standard notation in my document. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on this default notehead here. You can see the difference between my David Phil and my notehead black. And I'm going to hit this little button here, which says remove notehead from set. And what this is going to do is it doesn't delete that notehead, it just takes it out of this notehead set so that the changes I make in this set only apply to my new noteheads I'm creating. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this one. So now you can see we're left with a default notehead of David Phil. You can see that the name here of the one I have selected, and then we have some properties down here. The first property we have is what kind of note duration is going to get this notehead. You can see it's set to a quarter note, and you can also see it is set where anything a quarter note or shorter will use this notehead as well. This is really common in music when you think about it. 8th notes, 16th notes, 32nd notes, they all use the same note head. It's the stems that change them. And so if we wanted to make, say, a half note, for example, we could go ahead and hit the plus sign to add a new note. And we're going to call this David Open. We're going to set this one to our half note duration, and then we're going to uncheck this less than, and we're going to check this use for durations longer than. So this is going to say, hey, if you see a half note or a whole note, use this one notehead. Now you could put in individual noteheads for each rhythmic differentiation, also all the other types, like if you use double whole notes and things like that. But in this case, I don't really need that. Now the problem is, you can see right now, both noteheads look the same. So let's go ahead and change this one to be an open notehead. So what we're going to do is come down and go to this little pencil here, and we're going to hit edit, and it's going to bring us to our editor. And inside the editor here, you'll see that we have our standard notehead in there. And what we want to do is just get rid of this thing. So we're going to hit the little trash can here. And then we're going to come over here because you can see we predefined under our glyphs have our noteheads. And look, there's my half note notehead right there for me. And I'm going to double click on it to add it into my document. Now there's a couple of things to note about this menu here. The first thing is we can make noteheads larger and smaller by either using the scale command down here on the bottom, or we can click and just drag on these little corner boxes and make them bigger. The second thing we'll see is on the next item over, you'll see this thing for stem. And what this is, if I zoom in on my notehead, you will see some little blue X's. And these little blue X's are where a stem would connect to this notehead. Now there is justification where you might actually want to change this, but I would probably suggest not messing around with this too much unless you really have a distinct reason why you need to change it. These things will represent both the double noteheads, where you have two noteheads sharing a stem, as well as single noteheads up and down. And so that's what all these different categories are for. And you can see the little trash cans here are if you wanted to get rid of one of these little anchor points. But again, I think the default is going to work just fine, so I'm not going to touch that right now. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to hit OK. You can now see I have two different styles of noteheads in my default here. Now, if I wanted to add, say, a whole note for this notehead style, I could go ahead and uncheck this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat. I'm actually going to import a default notehead. And I'm going to go down and I'm going to add this notehead whole, which we know to be the standard whole note in Dorico. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click this button to duplicate it. And then I'm going to click on this duplicate one I made, and I'm going to call this one David, whole N for whole note. And then I'm going to go back to my regular whole note, and I'm going to go ahead and again remove that because I don't want it in this one because I'm changing things. Now you can see there's two identical looking noteheads. You can tell the difference though, because this one here, do you see how it has the star filled in and the trash can is unavailable? That means that's the Dorico default. And this one here is not, because I could click on the star and I could delete it with the little trash can. Now, you can see it's set to be for a whole note, or a semi-breve as they call it. And I'm going to, though, I want this one to be extra large. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go ahead and grab my little handles and I'm just going to make it bigger. And I'm going to recenter it there, hit OK. So now you can see I have quarter notes, half notes, and a giant whole note. From here, I could just hit the OK button, and I can come down and I can click on any note in my project, and I could right-click, go under Noteheads, and you'll see I have my new Notehead, David Notehead category, and I can click on it. Now, right now, it doesn't look any different because I made my quarter note Notehead the same, but watch what happens if I turn this into a whole note. You can see that it created that giant Notehead for me because that was the custom setting I set. I can always get rid of this by going back under Notehead and just changing it back to the default, and you'll see it puts it right back to where it was. Now, you can do this for any of the Noteheads, and again, if you wanted to bring in some of those template Noteheads, that would save you a lot of time because you would at least start with something that's a known commodity, and then you can just get rid of the one that you don't need out of your set. But there is another superpower here I want to show you. Let's say in this drum set, I want all of my X's on the top here to also have a little plus sign on the top. Now, I could add this as an articulation, but let's say I just really wanted it to be a part of the Notehead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my Notehead set editor. I'm going to go under my David Notehead here. But this time I'm going to duplicate it so I can make these changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this Notehead set, which is now called David Notehead 1. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to import the default X head from Dorico. So you can see down here Notehead X Black, which is the default. And then I'm going to copy it because I want to keep all of its good defaults, but I want to change something. So now that I have a copy, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this one X Plus so that it's different. And I'm going to go and I'm going to remove this one from my Notehead set. And then I'm going to click on my little pencil. And one of the things you can do here in Dorico, which is kind of cool, is you can actually add a second item to the Notehead. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here under my glyphs. And under range, I'm going to type in percussion because the symbol I'm looking for is found under the percussion playing techniques. And I'm going to add this little plus to my Notehead. So I'm going to go ahead and double click it. And you can see it add the little plus for me. And what I want is I actually want this thing to be floating above or below the Notehead, depending on which way the stem goes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag it above. Now, right now, the anchor point for this glyph is set over here. You can see the little blue arrow. Now, I can change this under the attachment tab, and I could make this so that it comes from the top center of both. This really isn't that important, but if that helps you align it better, it's not a bad idea because it also helps you get these numbers easier and more kind of rational. I also want to make this a little smaller, so I'm going to set this to 75% scale. I'm going to bring it a little closer to my Notehead again. Okay, so now that I've done this, I'm going to hit OK. And now you can see I have a Notehead with a little plus that floats over the Notehead. But what I want to do now is I want to add one for the downstem version, because you can see down here in the options, you can set which way to use this Notehead. So this one would be my downstem because we want the stem going down with the plus above, but now we need to make one for our upstem. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this one. I'm going to give it a new name. I'm just going to add a D down there for the plus being down or below. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to grab my little plus and I'm going to put it underneath my Notehead, hit OK. And I'm going to change this to an up stem note, meaning the stem's going up, so the plus needs to be on the bottom. So you can see now I have two different Noteheads like this. Now, it's true that I want these to be for quarter notes or smaller, and I also want to get rid of these extra Noteheads because I actually want these ones to be my default. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove these extra Noteheads from my set. And then I'm going to set my default to this one here. But don't worry, Dorico will know, depending on the stem direction, which Notehead to choose. And because I don't need this, I don't want any other Notehead in this particular set, I'm going to go ahead and leave this alone. I don't need a whole note or a half note version for this particular project. So now that I've done this, I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to come back into my project and I'm going to click on one of these notes here. I'm going to right-click, go down to Notehead, and I'm going to set it to this Notehead 1. And you'll see it adds our little plus sign. There it is right there. And if I was to flip this stem over by hitting the F key, you'll see that the plus moves automatically for me. So if you had an extended technique section where you wanted to tell the performer to do a specific thing per a symbol, you could literally select an entire group of notes like this, right-click, go down to Notehead, assign your custom Notehead, and you'll see it will automatically add all of the elements you need without you having to do a bunch of different articulations, copy, pasting. And again, if you flip the stems over, all of those little pluses are going to alter exactly the way you need them to be. You can also use this in your percussion kit to make it so a specific playback technique will utilize that by going under Setup, and clicking on your percussion kit and editing it. And then under your instrument, let's say hi-hat, and playing techniques, you could go in and you could choose this Notehead from the list. Here it is, David Notehead 1. And now I can hit OK, close, and you'll see all of my hi-hat notes now automatically carry that symbol. Now, you might think this is in the way because all of these plus signs are down inside the staff, but don't worry, under that Notehead set editor, we can actually go back in here and we could raise the symbol up so that it actually would technically be floating above the stem. And so these are all going to be up stem notes, so we need to click on this one and hit Edit. And we're actually going to grab the plus sign, we're going to drag it quite a bit above the Notehead like this. And when we hit OK, you'll see now they're all floating above. And because I know in a percussion part I'm never going to have a different stem direction, this means this custom Notehead will allow me to add these really quickly and easily, and so they'll always be there, and I don't have to add any extra things to the score because every time I enter that instrument on that note, it will appear the way I want it to. Now again, I know that most people probably aren't going to be messing around with Notehead sets, but if you're creating extended techniques, exercises for students, and other things, this could be a really handy tool. It's also nice to note that it is a very simple process as long as we remember those really important elements, which is once we create a new Notehead set, we want to remove extra Noteheads. So we need to add or duplicate a note and then remove the one that was by default in there. Because if you change a default Notehead, it will change every single note in your document, which is probably not what you're looking for. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe the videos. I'm going for 50,000 subscribers this year, and things are off to a great start. I've been really enjoying doing these Dorico videos, so keep shooting out those questions. I love having new inspiration for ways of helping you get to know how to use this software. If you have any questions or anything, please check out my website. I do lots of Zoom lessons for Dorico as well if you need some help getting your engraving looking good and getting everything going in Dorico. So again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.